The morning sun cast long shadows across New Terra Colony as the strange ships appeared in the sky. Dr. Sarah Martinez was tending her garden when the first vessel landed with a thunderous roar. The ship was massive and black, with sharp edges that looked like they could cut through steel. She dropped her watering can and ran toward the colony center where everyone was gathering. More ships followed, 12 in total. They landed in perfect formation outside the colony walls. The people of New Terra had been expecting this day for months. The galactic surveys had detected their little settlement, and now someone had come to visit. But these visitors did not look friendly. The ship doors opened with a hiss of steam. Out stepped creatures that made the colonists step backward in fear. They were tall, much taller than any human. Their skin was covered in natural armor plates that looked like metal shields. Their eyes glowed red, and their hands ended in claws that gleamed in the sunlight. These were and they had come to claim New Terra. Commander Vex 9 walked ahead of his soldiers. He stood 3 meters tall, and his armor was decorated with symbols that told of many victories in battle. Behind him marched 11 more warriors, each one a veteran of countless wars. They had conquered 47 worlds for the Empire. New Terra would be number 48. The colonists gathered in the main square. There were only 200 humans living on New Terra. Most of them were scientists, engineers, farmers, and their families. They had no army, no weapons beyond basic tools. They had come here to build a new life, not to fight wars. Governor Harrison stepped forward. He was an old man who had led the colony since its founding 5 years ago. His hands shook as he approached the alien commander. "Welcome to New Terra," Harrison said, trying to keep his voice steady. "We are peaceful people. We mean no harm to anyone." Commander Vex 9 looked down at the small human. In his language, which the colony's computers quickly translated, he spoke with a voice like grinding stone. "I am Commander Vex 9 of the Elite Guard. This world now belongs to the Empire. You have one choice: leave now or be removed." The colonists whispered among themselves. This was their home. They had spent years building it from nothing. The farms were just starting to produce good crops. The mining operations were finally profitable. They could not just leave. "Please," Governor Harrison said, "we have legal claim to this planet. The Galactic Treaty recognizes our settlement rights." The commander laughed. It was a harsh sound that made children cry. "Legal claim. The only law that matters is the law of strength. Your species is weak. You have no warriors. You cannot hold what you cannot defend." Dr. Martinez watched from the crowd. Her husband worked in the mining operation. Her daughter attended the colony school. This was their life. But what could they do against these armored giants? "However," Commander Vex 9 continued, "the Empire believes in honor. We do not simply crush the helpless. We offer you a chance to prove your worth." He gestured to his soldiers. "Choose 12 of your best warriors. They will face 12 of mine in single combat. If your fighters win, we will recognize your claim to this world. If they lose, you will surrender the colony immediately." The humans looked at each other with growing despair. Warriors. They had no warriors. Dr. Martinez was a botanist. Her neighbor fixed communications equipment. The man next to him studied rocks. How could any of them fight these alien soldiers? "We are not warriors," Governor Harrison said quietly. "We are farmers, scientists, builders." "Then you have already lost," Vex 9 replied. "Choose your fighters or we begin the conquest now." The crowd began to panic. Some people talked about running to the ships and leaving the planet. Others spoke of hiding in the mines until the aliens left. But where would they go? This was their only home. Then a voice cut through the fear. "I will fight." Everyone turned to see who had spoken. It was the 17-year-old son of the chief mining engineer. He was tall for his age but still looked like a boy next to the alien warriors. His black hair was messy from working in the equipment yard, and his clothes were covered in grease stains. "No," his father called out, "you are just a child," but stepped forward. "I know this planet better than anyone. I have lived here since I was 12 years old. I will fight for our home." Another voice joined his, "So will I." Sarah pushed through the crowd. She was 19 and studying geology at the Colony University. She was small and quiet, but her eyes blazed with determination. "And me. Me too. Count me in." One by one, more young people stepped forward. David, who studied plants. The twins, Jake, and who could fix anything that was broken. Who kept all the communications working. Tommy Park, who programmed the computers. By the time they finished volunteering, there were 12 of them, all between the ages of 16 and 22. Commander Vex 9 stared at them in disbelief. These were not warriors. They were children. The youngest among them would barely reach his chest. Some still had the soft faces of youth. This was not a challenge, it was an insult. "These are your champions," he asked. "Children, do you mock the Empire?" Stepped forward. "We are the champions of New Terra. We accept your challenge." The alien commander felt anger rising in his chest. His warriors had fought across the galaxy. They had defeated the armored legions of Prime. They had broken the psychic armies of the mind worlds. They had crushed the bioengineered super soldiers of the Helix Federation. And now these soft human children thought they could stand against them. "Very well," Vex 9 said coldly. "Tomorrow at dawn we fight. Prepare yourselves, young humans. You go to meet your doom with honor at least." As the aliens returned to their ships, the colonists surrounded their young volunteers. Many people cried. These children were going to die tomorrow, and everyone knew it. But the young people themselves seemed strangely calm. That night, they gathered together and talked quietly about the planet they loved, the lives they had built, and the future they were willing to die to protect. They did not know that tomorrow would change everything the galaxy thought it knew about humanity. Dawn came too quickly for the people of New Terra Colony. The humans gathered around a flat area outside the main settlement that would serve as the fighting ground. The ships formed a circle around the space, and alien warriors stood watching with their arms crossed. They looked confident and relaxed, like they were about to watch an easy training exercise. Commander Vex 9 stood in the center of the area with his translator device. "The rules are simple," he announced. "One fighter from each side. Combat continues until one cannot fight anymore. The winner's team gains a point. First team to win 7 matches claims victory." The 12 human volunteers stood together on one side. They looked tiny compared to the massive alien soldiers across from them. Many colonists had tears in their eyes as they watched their young people prepare to die. "Who fights first for the humans?" Vex 9 asked. Sarah stepped forward. At 19 years old, she was one of the smallest people in the group. She weighed maybe 50 kilograms and stood barely 1.5 meters tall. Her specialty was studying rocks and soil, not fighting. She carried her geology tools in a belt around her waist, and her hands shook slightly as she walked to the center. "I volunteer Warrior 5 for the," Commander Vex 9 announced. The alien who stepped forward was enormous even by standards. 5 stood nearly 4 meters tall and weighed as much as a small vehicle. His natural armor was thick and from many battles. He had fought for 30 years across the galaxy and had never lost a single combat. He looked down at Sarah like she was an insect. "This is your fighter," 5 asked in disbelief. "I could accidentally step on her." "Begin," Commander Vex 9 ordered. 5 charged forward like a living tank. His strategy was simple: use his massive size and strength to crush his tiny opponent quickly. He had used this approach successfully on hundreds of worlds. But as he ran toward Sarah, she did something unexpected. She ran away. Sarah sprinted toward a pile of rocks at the edge of the fighting area. 5 followed her, laughing. Running only delays the inevitable small human. But Sarah was not just running randomly. She had spent 3 years studying every rock and mineral deposit around the colony. She knew which stones were strong and which were weak. As she reached the rock pile, she pulled a small device from her tool belt. It was a sonic resonator, normally used to test rock density. She pressed the device against a large boulder and activated it. The rock had been weakened by years of weather and contained a fault line running through its center. The sonic vibration shattered it perfectly in half, just as 5 reached her. The alien warrior was running too fast to stop. He crashed headfirst into the falling boulder, and his own momentum worked against him. Even his thick natural armor could not protect him from the impact. He hit the ground unconscious, defeated by his own strength and a 19-year-old geology student who knew how rocks broke. The silence was complete. No one moved or spoke. Then Sarah raised her fist in the air and smiled. "Geology wins," she shouted. The human colonists erupted in cheers, but the celebration was mixed with shock. Sarah had just done the impossible. She had defeated a veteran warrior using nothing but knowledge and quick thinking. Commander Vex 9 stared at his unconscious soldier. This was not supposed to happen. 5 was one of his best fighters. How had a human child defeated him? "Next fight," the commander announced, trying to keep control of the situation. David stepped forward for the humans. He was 20 years old and spent his time studying plants and growing food for the colony. He was tall and thin, with gentle hands that were better suited to tending crops than fighting. His opponent was Warrior 7, who carried traditional energy weapons and had conquered 12 worlds. "This will be over quickly," 7 said confidently. He activated his energy lance, which glowed with deadly power. But David was not afraid. As 7 advanced, David reached into his plant collection bag and pulled out several small pods. They looked harmless, like simple seeds or fruits. "Surrender now, plant tender," 7 called out. "I do not wish to kill a gardener." David smiled. "You should learn more about plants before you dismiss them." He crushed the pods in his hands and threw the contents into the air. A cloud of fine spores spread around 7. The alien warrior laughed and continued advancing through the cloud. But within seconds, his steps became unsteady. His energy weapon wavered in his grip. What is this?" 7 gasped. "Paralytic spores from the tremor vine," David explained calmly. "I discovered them last year while studying defensive mechanisms in local plant life. They cause temporary paralysis in most carbon-based life forms, very useful for protecting crops from large animals." 7 tried to raise his weapon, but his muscles would not obey him. His nervous system was shutting down as the plant toxins took effect. He collapsed to the ground, unable to move but still conscious and aware of his defeat. David walked over and gently took the energy weapon from the paralyzed warrior's hands. "You will be fine in about an hour," he said kindly. "The effect is temporary." 2 victories for the humans. The crowd was getting louder now, starting to believe that maybe, just maybe, their young people could actually win this impossible challenge. But Commander Vex 9 was getting angry. His warriors were being made to look foolish by children. "Enough games," he snarled. "Next fight will be different." The twins, Jake and stepped forward together. They were only 16 years old and worked with their father fixing machines and equipment around the colony. They always worked as a team and rarely spoke to anyone except each other. "2 humans?" Vex 9 asked. "We fight together or not at all," Jake said. "Very well. Warriors Kex 2 and 8 destroy these children quickly." The 2 fighters were experienced partners who had fought side by side for years. They coordinated their attacks perfectly, using advanced tactics and superior strength. But they had never faced opponents like the twins. Jake and moved like they shared the same mind. When one stepped left, the other stepped right. When Jake dropped low, jumped high. They had spent their entire lives working together on complex machinery, and they approached the fight like it was a mechanical problem to be solved. The warriors tried to use their size advantage, but the twins turned it against them. When Kex too swung his massive fist, ducked and guided the blow into 8. When 8 tried to grab Jake, the boy slipped away and caused the alien to crash into his own partner. The twins used leverage, timing, and perfect coordination to make the two powerful aliens fight each other instead of fighting them. Within minutes, both warriors were on the ground, knocked unconscious by their own teammates' attacks. 3 victories for humanity. The impossible was becoming reality, and Commander Vex 9 finally understood that these human children were not what they appeared to be. The atmosphere around the fighting ground had completely changed. What started as a funeral for the human children had become something nobody expected. 3 warriors lay defeated, and the aliens were no longer laughing or looking confident. Commander Vex 9 paced back and forth behind his remaining soldiers, his red eyes burning with confusion and growing anger. The human colonists were cheering louder now. Children who had been crying for their young defenders were now jumping up and down with excitement. Maybe their home could be saved after all. "This means nothing," Commander Vex 9 announced loudly, though his voice sounded less certain than before. 3 lucky victories prove nothing. My remaining warriors will crush these humans. Stepped forward next. She was 18 years old and worked as the colony's main communications technician. She was responsible for keeping all the electronic systems running, from the internet to the emergency radios. She was small and wore thick glasses, and her fingers were always stained with electronic components. Her opponent was Warrior 4, who wore the most advanced armor anyone had seen. His suit was covered in sensors, targeting systems, and defensive shields. He looked like a walking computer made for war. "Finally, a real challenge," 4 said as he activated his systems. "My armor will predict your every move, human. You cannot surprise me." Adjusted her glasses and smiled. "Your armor runs on the same frequency band as our communications equipment. I have been listening to your system transmissions for the past hour." "Impossible," 4 replied. "Military encryption cannot be broken by primitive human technology." "You are right," agreed. "I cannot break your encryption, but I do not need to break it, I just need to add some noise to it." She pulled a small device from her tool belt. It looked like a simple radio, but had modified it while watching the earlier fights. As 4 advanced toward her, she activated her device. Immediately, false signals flooded 4's sensors. His targeting system began showing in 12 different positions at once. His armor's computer started warning him about attacks coming from every direction. The defensive shields activated randomly, draining his power. "What have you done?" 4 demanded, swinging his weapon at empty air. "I am feeding your system false data," explained, easily stepping around his confused attacks. "Your armor thinks I am everywhere and nowhere. It is fighting ghosts." 4 spun in circles, attacking targets that were not there. His own advanced technology was defeating him. Within minutes, he had exhausted himself fighting illusions and collapsed from power drain. Had won without throwing a single punch. 4 victories for humanity. Tommy Park was next. At 17, he was the youngest human fighter and looked like he should still be in school. He spent his time programming computers and maintaining the colony's data systems. He was thin and pale from spending too much time indoors, and he moved carefully like he was afraid of getting hurt. Warrior 1 was chosen to face him. 1 was known for his speed and agility. While other relied on strength, he was fast enough to dodge energy weapons and smart enough to outthink his opponents. "This boy looks like he has never been in a fight in his life," 1 observed. "I will be gentle and end this quickly." The fight began, and immediately everyone could see that 1 was right. Tommy looked clumsy and scared. He stumbled as he moved and seemed to have no idea how to defend himself. One could have ended the fight in seconds, but he decided to play with his opponent first. But Tommy was not as helpless as he appeared. During the previous fights, he had been watching very carefully. He had studied how each warrior moved, how they attacked, how they defended. His programmer's mind had been analyzing patterns and looking for weaknesses. Tommy knew that one had a blind spot on his left side where his armor plates overlapped. He knew that all took exactly 0.7 seconds longer to turn left than right because of their body structure. He had calculated the exact angle needed to stay in one's visual dead zone. As one moved to attack, Tommy slipped into the blind spot and stayed there. No matter how fast the alien warrior moved, Tommy moved faster, always staying in the place where one could not see him. He used precise strikes to specific nerve points he had identified by watching the earlier fights. Within minutes, one's own nervous system was working against him. His left arm went numb, then his left leg. Tommy had turned this body into his enemy. "How?" one gasped as he fell to the ground. "You move like you know my body better than I do." "I do," Tommy replied quietly. "I studied you." 5 victories for humanity. Stepped forward next. She was 21 years old and studying medicine at the Colony University. She wanted to become a doctor and help people heal. She was gentle and kind, and the thought of fighting anyone made her feel sick to her stomach. Warrior 9 was a psychological warfare specialist. His job was to break his enemies mentally before the physical fight even began. He had driven strong warriors to madness just by talking to them. "You are afraid, human," 9 said in a voice like poisoned honey. "I can smell your fear. You do not want to fight. You want to help people, not hurt them. You are weak. You will fail, and everyone you care about will suffer because of your weakness." But instead of becoming afraid, became calm. She had spent years studying how minds and bodies work together. She understood fear, pain, and stress as medical conditions that could be diagnosed and treated. "You are trying to trigger my fight-or-flight response," she observed clinically. "You want my adrenaline levels to spike so I make poor decisions, but you are also afraid. Your psychological attacks mean you doubt your physical abilities." 9 was stunned. No one had ever analyzed his mental attacks like a medical condition before. He tried to continue his psychological assault, but treated him like a patient instead of an enemy. "Your posture indicates tension in your lower back," she continued. "Your breathing suggests elevated heart rate. You are experiencing performance anxiety. This is normal when facing an unexpected challenge." The more talked like a doctor, the more confused 9 became. He was supposed to be the one getting inside his opponent's head, but instead she was getting inside his. When he finally attacked physically, used her medical knowledge to strike specific pressure points and nerve clusters with surgical precision. 9 collapsed, not from injury but from his own mind turning against him. Had defeated a psychological warfare expert using psychology. 6 victories for humanity. Commander Vex 9 stared at his fallen warriors in complete disbelief. This was impossible. These were not warriors. They were children with no military training. They should have been dead within minutes. Instead, they were systematically destroying the most elite fighting force in the Empire. For the first time in his long military career, Commander Vex 9 felt something he had never experienced before: doubt. These humans were not fighting like any species they had ever conquered. Every other race had predictable warrior traditions and military doctrines. But these humans seemed to approach each fight like a puzzle to be solved rather than a battle to be won. The crowd of human colonists was going wild with excitement. Their impossible children were actually winning. New Terra could remain their home, but the young fighters themselves remained focused and calm. They knew the hardest battles were still ahead. The impossible was happening before everyone's eyes. 6 warriors lay defeated on the ground. victims of human children who should have been crushed in seconds. The mood among the alien soldiers had changed from confidence to confusion to something approaching fear. These humans were not fighting like any species they had ever encountered. Commander Vex 9 gathered his remaining warriors for a desperate conference. His voice was low and urgent as he spoke to them in their own language. "Something is wrong here," he said. "These humans are using tactics we have never seen. They do not fight with honor or strength. They fight like they are solving puzzles." Warrior 6 nodded grimly. "Each one fights differently. There is no pattern we can predict or counter." "We still have 6 warriors left," Commander Vex 9 said, though his voice lacked its earlier confidence. "We can still win this, but we must be more careful. These humans are dangerous in ways we do not understand." On the human side, the young fighters were quietly discussing their next moves. They had studied their opponents during the break and were planning their final strategies. Carlos Mendoza stepped forward for the 7th fight. He was 20 years old and worked as a maintenance engineer's apprentice. His job was to keep all the colony's machines and equipment running. His hands were permanently stained with oil and grease, and his tool belt contained devices that most people could not even identify. His opponent was Warrior 6, who had been chosen because his armor was the most heavily protected. The hope that overwhelming defensive power could finally stop these troublesome humans. "I will not underestimate you, human," 6 announced as he activated his shields and defensive systems. "But raw power will defeat your tricks." Carlos looked at the glowing barriers surrounding his opponent and nodded thoughtfully. During the break between fights, he had been examining the alien equipment with an engineer's eye. He had noticed something interesting about how their technology worked. "Your shields use electromagnetic fields," Carlos observed as he pulled several small devices from his tool belt. "Very advanced, but they run on the same basic principles as our equipment. Your primitive technology cannot penetrate defenses," 6 replied confidently. "You are right," Carlos agreed, "but I do not need to penetrate them. I just need to overload them." Carlos had been building something during the break. It looked like a simple collection of spare parts and broken electronics, but it was actually a crude electromagnetic pulse device. He had built it from colony maintenance equipment, communications gear, and mining tools. When he activated his improvised EMP device, 6's advanced armor suddenly went dead. The shields disappeared, the weapons powered down, and the life support systems shut off. The warrior was left standing in a suit of dead metal, unable to move or fight. "How?" 6 gasped, struggling with the weight of his now powerless armor. "I turned your technology against itself," Carlos explained. "Sometimes the simplest solution is the best one." 7 victories for humanity, they had won. The human colonists erupted in celebration. They had done it. Their young people had actually defeated the mighty empire. New Terra was safe. But as the cheering began, Commander Vex 9 raised his hand for silence. "Wait," he called out. "The challenge was first to 7 victories. Your humans have won 7 fights, but I invoke the right of final challenge. As commander, I have the right to face your best fighter in single combat. If I win, the entire challenge is void." The celebration stopped. Governor Harrison stepped forward, looking worried. That was not part of the original agreement. "It is military law," Vex 9 replied coldly. "In any formal challenge, the commanding officer may invoke final combat if his forces are defeated. It is my right." The young human fighters looked at each other. They had already proven themselves beyond anyone's dreams, but now they faced one final test. Commander Vex 9 was not just any warrior. He was the greatest fighter the Empire had ever produced, with over a century of victories across the galaxy. Hayes stepped forward. She was 19 years old and had grown up on a farm before coming to New Terra with her parents. She was strong from years of hard physical work, But more importantly, she understood patience, timing, and the long view that came from working with growing things. "I will face your commander," she said calmly. Commander Vex 9 looked at her with something that might have been respect. "You have courage, human, but courage will not save you. I have fought for 130 years. I have never been defeated." "Then you are overdue for a learning experience," replied. The final battle began, and immediately everyone could see the difference. Commander Vex 9 was not like his warriors. He was faster, stronger, more skilled, and infinitely more experienced. He moved with the deadly grace of a perfect predator who had spent over a century perfecting the art of combat. Did not try to match his speed or power. Instead, she used the farming strategy she knew best: patience. She defended carefully, watched for patterns, and waited for opportunities. Like a farmer who knows that crops grow in their own time, she understood that victory would come when it was ready. Commander Vex 9 attacked with techniques learned from 100 different worlds, but had grown up working with animals that were stronger and faster than she was. She knew how to stay calm under pressure, how to read an opponent's intentions, and how to wait for exactly the right moment. The fight continued for much longer than any of the others. Commander Vex 9 began to realize that this human girl was different from the others. She was not trying to defeat him quickly with clever tricks. She was playing a longer game, wearing him down slowly and steadily. As the battle went on, the commander's attacks became more desperate. He had never faced an opponent who could match his endurance, absorbed his attacks, learned from each exchange, and gradually began to turn his own aggression against him. Finally, after what seemed like hours, Commander Vex 9 made a mistake. He overextended himself on a powerful attack, leaving himself briefly vulnerable. Had been waiting for exactly this moment. She struck with perfect timing and precision, using techniques she had learned from watching all the previous fights. Commander Vex 9 fell to the ground, defeated by a 19-year-old farm girl who understood that sometimes the best way to win is simply to outlast your opponent. The silence that followed was complete. The greatest warrior in history had been defeated by a human child. The impossible had become reality, and the galaxy would never be the same. Commander Vex 9 lay on the ground, staring up at the sky of New Terra. For the first time in 130 years of combat, he had been defeated, not by a mighty warrior or advanced technology, but by a 19-year-old human girl who had simply outlasted him. The reality of what had happened was still sinking in. Haze stood over him, breathing hard but victorious. She extended her hand to help him up. "Good fight," she said simply, the way she might compliment someone after a hard day's work on the farm. The commander stared at her offered hand for a long moment. In his culture, defeat meant death or slavery, but this human child was offering him respect and assistance. Slowly, carefully, he reached up and took her hand, allowing her to help him to his feet. The human colonists were celebrating wildly now. They had done the impossible. Their young people had defeated the most elite military force in the known galaxy. New Terra was safe, and they could continue building the life they had dreamed of among the stars. But Commander Vex 9 was not celebrating. He was thinking. As a military leader, he had to understand what had just happened here. His forces had not been defeated by better weapons or superior numbers. They had been defeated by something he had never encountered before. "How?" he asked quietly. "How did you defeat warriors who have conquered 47 worlds?" Thought about the question seriously. "We did not fight you the way you expected to be fought," she finally said. "You trained to fight warriors. We are not warriors. We are problem solvers." Commander Vex 9 looked around at the 12 young humans who had destroyed his elite unit. Sarah the geologist, who had used rocks to defeat strength. David the botanist, who had turned plants into weapons. The twins, who had made teamwork into an art form. The technician, Tommy the programmer, the medical student, Carlos the engineer, and the farmer. "You are something new," he said slowly. "In all our conquests, we have faced warrior cultures, military empires, and technological civilizations, but we have never faced a species that treats every problem like a puzzle to be solved." He walked among the defeated warriors who were slowly recovering from their various defeats. None of them were seriously injured. The humans had defeated them without unnecessary cruelty or permanent harm. This was also something new in Vex 9's experience. "You could have killed us," he observed. Who had organized the human defense shook his head. "We do not want to kill anyone, we just want to keep our home." Commander Vex 9 made a decision that would change galactic history. He activated his communication device and sent a message directly to the High Command on the home world. "This is Commander Vex 9 reporting from the human colony world designated New Terra," he said formally. "I am invoking Protocol 7. The humans did not know what Protocol 7 meant, but they could see the shock on the faces of the other warriors. Some of them gasped in surprise. Others looked at their commander with something approaching awe. "What is Protocol 7? Governor Harrison asked. "It is a recognition that we have encountered a species worthy of respect and caution," Vex 9 explained. "It has only been invoked 3 times in history. The last time was over 2,000 years ago." He continued speaking into his communication device. "The human species demonstrates capabilities beyond our current understanding. They do not fight as we fight. They do not think as we think. They approach conflict as an intellectual challenge rather than a test of strength. Our elite forces have been defeated not by superior power, but by superior adaptability." He paused and looked directly at the young humans who had beaten him. "They represent something we have not seen before in our expansion across the galaxy. They may be young as a species, but they possess the ability to find solutions to problems we did not even know existed. I recommend immediate reclassification of human space as a protected research zone. We have much to learn from them." The response from High Command came quickly. The voice speaking was cold and formal, clearly from someone very high in the Empire's leadership. "Commander Vex 9, your request for Protocol 7 is approved. All forces are ordered to withdraw from human space immediately. The human species is granted full territorial recognition and protection under Imperial law. Your forces will return to base for extensive debriefing." Commander Vex 9 turned off his communication device and faced the humans. "It is done," he said. "Your world is safe. Your species is now under the protection of the Empire. No one will threaten you while we exist to prevent it." But he was not finished. "More importantly, we will tell the galaxy what we have learned here today. Other species will hear the story of New Terra. They will know that humanity is not to be underestimated or dismissed." The celebration among the colonists was joyful but also thoughtful. They had won more than just their freedom. They had announced humanity's presence in the galaxy in a way that would be remembered forever. That evening, as the ships prepared to depart, Commander Vex 9 approached the 12 young fighters one last time. "You have taught us something important," he told them. "We thought strength was the only thing that mattered in the universe, but you have shown us that intelligence, creativity, and adaptability can be more powerful than any weapon." Smiled. "We just did what humans do. We saw a problem and found a way to solve it." "That," Commander Vex 9 replied, "is exactly what makes your species so remarkable." As the alien ships lifted off from New Terra and disappeared into the stars, they carried with them a message that would spread across the galaxy. Humanity was no longer just another primitive species struggling to reach the stars. They were something new and unexpected, a species that could turn any challenge into an opportunity to learn and grow. The 12 young defenders of New Terra returned to their normal lives, but they had changed the course of galactic history. Other alien species would approach humanity with caution and respect, knowing the story of how children armed with nothing but intelligence and determination had defeated the mightiest military force in known space. And in the years to come, as humanity spread among the stars, they would carry with them the lesson learned on New Terra, that the greatest weapon any species can possess is not strength or technology, but the ability to see every problem as a puzzle waiting to be solved. The galaxy would never be quite the same again, and that was exactly how humanity liked it.